Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. My name is Mr. Diaz. Today we are going to cover section 1.2, which is user input and variables. So let's get started. We are going to use Replit. So let's go over to Replit. And once you should already have an account at this point. Remember that if you want to be able to email me your code if you need help, remember to share it. And my username is David Diaz 5. And we'll go over how to share your code or your replets with any of your peers or myself. So let's go and create a new file. Now we are going to select the language Java. So we always going to program in Java in this class. So we're going to select Java. And then from here, we're going to type in notes, section 1.2. Remember that you need to be able to submit this code in order to be able to get credit for your lesson. And now, let's go and type in output. We're just going to say section 1.2. That should be sufficient. And now we're going to create a replit. There's one more thing that we're going to do. Now, notice that it's already giving you this window here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. It's already giving you your starting code, which is great. You don't need to memorize any of those, your public static void main, especially because we are not going to be talking about it until some of those components until unit 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the files. In this case, we only have one file called main. Remember that if your file is main.java, that's inside your computer, one of your folders, then the class is called main. If you want a class named student, then you have a student here. If you have a class named player, then you have a player. Remember that your class name should always start with an uppercase letter. We are going to hide this part because we are not going to be needing any more files, so therefore we're going to get rid of it. One of the things that we want to do is we are going to go into your settings, and I want you guys to do the following. I want you guys to go into your settings, and if you notice right underneath the settings, if you go a little further, there is code intelligence. We actually don't want it to be too smart. We want actually to not autocomplete stuff for us because it does get a little overwhelming, especially whenever we haven't covered some of the sections. So you want to click in here and let me refresh. Sometimes I need to refresh if it doesn't react. If sometimes you lose connection, and let me try once again. Let's see, I'm going to go into my settings, then I'm going to go and I'm going to disable it. That's what we want. So I want to be able to disable that section. Because now, what is the difference? At this point you say, so Diaz, what is the difference between one and another? So let's go and do system.out. Notice that it doesn't autocomplete stuff for me. It doesn't give me those suggestions that can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if we haven't used any of them. At this point, we don't need to take the time to be able to see all of the options that are available for us. So notice that if I go back and enable it, and the settings automatically takes place. And if I go system, and now it gives me all this. It's like, yeah, but what does that mean? Do I really need to know that at this point in the class? No. So therefore, if you can do me a huge favor and go ahead and disable it, that'll be a great help. And I think that's going to help us not get so overwhelmed with all the options. And if I do system, if I go back and I do system.out, it's not giving me all those additional suggestions. So once again, let's go and do a little cleanup here. I'm going to get rid of this line number 3 and 4. After the main, I'm going to go over to the first brace and I'm going to press enter. So that way they line up. Once again, after the main method, I'm gonna do that same thing. So that way it'll be much easier, especially as you guys are coding for your AP exam and you have to write it down. It'll be much easier to be able to see that you're not missing any of the braces, any for your pair. Now, replay is very nice because as soon as you highlight one, it highlights the corresponding brace, which makes it a little bit easier to see. And I'm going to place an additional space so I can separate my method from the name of the class. Now remember that sometimes we do have public, and you can type it in or you can just leave it out. Especially because we haven't talked about private or public or protected. So now, our lesson for today, we have learned how to do an output to the screen. And let's go and review that. So let's go and say system.out.print ln. And now we can print anything inside. So we're going to say Santa Fe High School. Notice that it automatically place your quotation mark and your closing parenthesis. And remember that every statement must end with a semicolon. Now, what's inside the parenthesis, because it's a set of words that are in a quotation mark, that's called a string. But actually, it's called a literal string. We are going to be talking about variable strings in a few minutes. And then we'll continue to talk about variable strings and or more variables as we go into unit or section 1.3. Now, if I run it, then it's going to print Santa Fe High School, which is what we wanted to do, correct? Now, for purposes, we want to be able to get some interaction from the user, especially at this time of the first and second unit. We want to be able to get interaction from the user so they can type in information. And that way we can use that information to be able to process it and perform additional outputs to your screen. Now, Java doesn't have that included in their main package. So therefore, we're going to have to import something that we call a scanner class. And that is one of the things that is powerful about many programming languages such as Java. Python has quite a few, in JavaScript. They have classes or packages where we said that you can import. So classes are all piled up the same in a package. And then you can actually use, and basically it's all programming that has been done for you. It's like whenever you have a automobile and you want to be able to, you're fixing your car, but you don't have all the tools. It's basically just going to over to your friends and say, no, can I borrow those tools because I need to use them? So that's basically the same thing. We are going to be able to use some tools that some people have developed. In this case, Oracle, which is the maker of Java, that we can import. And any import statements have to be done before the public class name or the name of the class. So therefore, we're going to do import space. We're going to do java.util.scanner. Scanner is the name of the class. And util is the package, the utility package within Java. We are not going to be creating classes now to Unit 5, and we can actually talk about that later. But for now, every time you're going to get user from input from your user, you must include this line at the very beginning, which is going to basically allow you to use the scanner class. Now that we have done that, we are going to let's get rid of line number 8. Let's go and start from scratch. So that's what we covered last time. We want to be able to get input from your user. So the first line is going to be able to be scanner space scan. Scan can actually be any name that you wanted. We're usually going to stick with scan. There's some other programs or other websites that might use something different. For now, we're going to use scan equals. you want to type in the word new. And notice that whenever you type in the word new, it's in blue. That means that that's a keyword. And we'll talk about the word new once we start building or on unit number 2. It's going to be scanner once again. And I know you say, hold on, Diaz. How can that make any sense? We have the word scanner here and the word scanner here. We'll talk about that later. And then it's going to be system.in, semicolon. So that is a line, the line that you must have and you can reference. Notice that you should have your notes when you are coding, so that way you can just reference, and after a while you just kind of start to memorize. But you should start to memorize some of those components. So you should be able to start to memorize system.out.println. You also need to be able to memorize that line, scanner, scan equals new scanner system.in. Now the system.in, that basically is going to be input from your keyboard. There's other ones that you actually can get input from a file. So if you have a database of all the players in the NBA and their age and their number of points, number of free throws, then you can actually import that database and be able to perform operations. And you can work with large data sets. But for now, we are just going to use the scanner class to be able to get input from the user. Now that we have that, now we are going to, they're going to type in a word or a sentence. And when they type it in, we need to be able to save it somewhere. So therefore, we are going to declare string, and we want to be able to say, okay, what do we want it to be? We are going to get the name of the user. So it's going to be name, semicolon. On the next line, it's going to be name again, equals scan dot next line. This is going to basically just open that, it's going to set it some space in memory. That way we can actually place a word. And we'll talk more on that on 1.3. So just be patient. 1.3 we'll talk about starting to talk about the allocation of memory. But for now, we are going to get the name of the user. And now let's go and run it and see what happens. Let's see if there's any errors. No, there's no error, so therefore we can just say David. And we get the input, right? But we are basically just getting input with not even asking a question. So let's go and ask a question first. Let's go and go over to line number 9. Notice that I'm going to line them up. Once again, one of the things that you want to make sure that you are careful is that you are lining up your everything within this method has to be the same. So it has to be an indentation and they all have to line up. That'll be part of the points that I'll be allocating for when you guys take your first quiz and your test. So let's go and do and ask a question. Let's go and type in system.out.println. Enter your name. So remember, that's what we learned last time. We can close your quotation mark, your parenthesis, and then end the statement with a semicolon. Don't forget your semicolons. And now let's go and run it. So first we're going to print, enter your name. No, let me print different screen. Enter your name, and now we're going to say, type in your name, David, which is great, right? But now, so now we ask the question, line number 9 asks the questions, line number 10 and 11 will basically just catch it. And now what do we want to do with that? We want to be able to just use it somehow. So we are going to do system.out.println, and now we're going to say hello. I'm going to place an extra space Then I'm gonna place a plus, and then whatever they typed in. Now, whatever they typed in is stored in name. So therefore, that is where it is stored. So therefore, we need to type in name. Notice I can place a little space here, but I'm gonna get rid of it and then semicolon. And now I'm gonna press enter. There are no errors. Sometimes you do forget a semicolon or just something minor that you might forget. You might misspell something and it will give you an error. So I'm gonna type in David. I'll press enter and say hello David. So now we were able to do a print statement. We were able to get input from the user and we were able to use that input into a statement. Now let's say that I want a exclamation point at the very end. So therefore, we are going to place another plus sign. Now the plus sign, you are connecting two variables. In this case, we are connecting what we call a literal variable, or excuse me, a literal string. And this one is a variable string. So that is the name, this variable name is going to hold whatever the user types in. In this case, David, or whatever name you typed in. The plus is going to connect them. Now when you connect two strings, that's called concatenation. Concatenation is the process of connecting two strings together. Now we can actually connect more than two strings. So now let's go and connect another string, plus, and I'm gonna place a period. Actually, let's do an exclamation point, right? That's what we talked about. So now we are connecting a literal string, a variable string, and we are connecting another literal string. And now if we run it, enter your name. So that'll be David. Hello David, and now we have the full sentence with a exclamation point. So now let's do several more things. First, what if you want to be able to enter your first name and your last name? So let's go and say enter your first name. And now this is the name. Now if I do the following, let me place additional space in between so we can actually have a little more space to talk about. If I go again and say, name equals scan the next line, and now the first one will be the first name, and then we want to be able to connect and get your first name, and now let's go and say afterwards we're gonna get their last name. So system.out.println, enter your last name. So therefore, they're going to enter the first name, and then they're going to enter your last name, and now we're going to print them. Now, at this point, I know what you're thinking. We are going to run into a problem, right? So let's go and say hello name, then, well, let's talk about that in a second. So if you already know that we're running into a problem, which is great, but be patient. I'll place a space, and then I'll place name again. And now I'm going to run it. And there are no errors, which is great. I'm going to type in David. Enter your last name. My last name is Diaz. It says, hello, Diaz. What happened? Correct. So in this case, we are using the variable name for your first name, and then the variable name for your last name. So therefore, you are writing it down, and then you're going to replace it. So now they both name has the word Diaz. David's lost, it's gone. So what we need to do, we need to be able to get another variable for the last name. So what we need to do, we need to be able to repeat line number 10. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna say string last name. And when we enter, we're going to save the last name into the variable last name. So last name is going to be a string variable. So therefore, this will be name, and if we want, we can go back and change it to first name, but for now we're going to leave it as that. And in this case, this will be last name. And now we can run it. So therefore we have enter your first name, which is David, enter your last name, which is Diaz, and now hello David Diaz, which is great. But now let's do an exclamation point. So let me just move this a little further to the right, so maybe if I can fit it will be great. And that'll be right above me. So now let's go and do an exclamation point plus exclamation point. And now we can run it. So now it's going to say, hello, David Diaz, exclamation point, right? Hold on, there's an error. What happened? So you have to remember that in this case, the exclamation point is not a variable name. It's not something, we want it to be a string literal or a literal string. So therefore, we want to make sure that we place it inside quotation marks. Do I need an additional space in there? No. That should be fine, right? So enter your first name, David. Enter your last name, Diaz. Enter, and that's it. Hello, David Diaz. So just be careful. In this case, this is called a literal string, whenever you have it in quotation marks. This is called a variable string. This is called a literal string, variable string, and literal string. And notice that each one has a plus in between. So if you forget the plus in between, it's going to give you an error. The plus in between is going to be connecting them, and that's called a concatenation. Now, we are going to talk about comments. So the last thing that we are going to be talking about are comments. So last time we talked about this type of comments, correct? We have my getting input from strings from user. Now, whenever we have the double dash, Java knows that that is a comment, so therefore it's going to ignore the entire line. So you can type in whatever, you can misspell things, you can place it in Spanish if you want, or French. But we have another type of comments. So what we're going to do at the very beginning, well, we have like a paragraph comment. So if you want to be able to type in quite a bit of information, you are going to place a / and an asterisk. We usually leave the first one by itself, and then we place a asterisk again, and then you guys type in Santa Fe High School. That should always be in every of your codes that you share with me in every single exercise. Then notice that when I press enter, it kind of lines that up for me. So that needs to be lined up. All the asterisks will be. So that is the styling. It just makes it much easier to read. And you are going to period 1. We're going to type in period 1, and that is on your notes as well. Then Santa Fe. Well, actually, let's go and type in your name first. Let's go and keep it. That way I know right away who it belongs from. This is David Diaz, period 1, Santa Fe High School. And AP Computer Science A. And your instructor is Mr. Diaz. Most of the time I'll have this done for you. But in case there'll be other times that you'll have to do it yourself. And then we're going to close it. So this is going to open it, and then this is going to close it. Now, there's going to be times that you can use this type of commenting just to be able to kind of debug your program. So, for example, let's say that you're not sure if this is making an error. Let me just delete a few more. So let's say, assume that you're not too sure if this line is correct or if this is creating an error. You can just comment it out, and that way just to test it out and say, is that making an error? If that one's making an error, then your program will run correctly afterwards. Or sometimes we're going to say, I want to be able to get rid of line number 16. I don't want to get rid of them. I just want to be able to kind of ignore them for now. So I can place one here, and notice I can place the closing one here, and that's going to comment that section out. I don't need the little stars or the little asterisks in between. I just need the beginning one and the end one to be able to comment an entire block of code. But whenever we do an official comment, we do want to be able to place that additional asterisk just for us to be able to read it a little easier. Everything that we remember, that all the white space we don't need, we need to type in everything in one line. But the styling is easier for your peers to read and for Mr. Diaz to be able to read as well. So that concludes section 1.2. Please take the time to email me if you have any additional questions, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.